Hello, and welcome to WonderBuzz with Nate Larson. I'm your host, Nate, and it is a real pleasure to have you here. Thank you very much for joining me. Now, I'm sure it is pretty obvious that this is my first episode and my first time doing anything like this as far as recording and microphones. So I will ask for a little patience from you, and hopefully with a little more work from me, these episodes will get better as we go along. The podcast is about adventure, exploration, the stories that happen when you chase the horizon, sometimes literally. And each episode, I want to share a little bit about where I am and who I am, what I'm seeing, stories from the road. I'll feature something about van life and photography or whatever else has been on my mind, which can be very wide-ranging, so you have been warned. And I'll usually try to end with a creative thought or a poem, either one I've written or something that's stuck with me over the years. So there's no real easy way to begin this story, and I thought what would be fun is just to literally dive into where I am today, and we'll just start the journey together. So I am in a van, and I affectionately refer to my van as VANHLN. It's not a cozy cabin or a nice podcast studio. I've set up my microphone on the bed, and we will get into van stuff later, but just to paint a little bit of a picture for you, I'm standing inside of my Sprinter van right now. And while I'm not parked in a van down by the river, I am parked next to the water tonight. And right in front of me, I've opened up my sliding door here facing the water, and right in front of me, there are two dolphins that keep surfacing, slipping below the water, coming back up. It's almost like they're playing. And if I look out beyond those dolphins, about 11 miles directly past them is Cape Canaveral and all the different launch pads there. And that's why I'm here tonight. I drove the van up and am hoping to see a rocket launch tonight. And the weather's looking very moody. It's pretty grumpy outside. So there's a chance that it'll be postponed. I still am holding out hope here. And while I was sitting here watching the waves and waiting for the launch, I was reminded of a few things. One, why I'm living this way right now. The fact that a couple days ago, I woke up hundreds of miles from here having had some really strong memories about my childhood, which I'm about to share with you, and being able to act on those memories and come down here and try to see this rocket launch, the first time I've ever seen a rocket launch. Why a rocket? Who cares about rockets? Well, ever since I was a kid, I wanted to be an astronaut. I had trading cards, like baseball trading cards, that had all the different NASA spacecraft on them. Apollo, Mercury, the shuttle. And I remember one of my favorite trips when I was young was going to the Air and Space Museum and standing in front of those towering rockets, imagining what it must have felt like to sit in one, to be strapped in, to hear that countdown. And I also have these very vivid memories of the museum store. It was a kind of a place that made you feel like you could bring a little bit of space home with you. I don't know, those stores you've probably been in with your kids or as a kid where there were hatches and space models and keychains and things like that. So I agonized over what to buy with whatever budget I'm sure my parents gave me. And, do I get a patch of the Apollo 11 emblem? Do I get a space shuttle keychain? I ended up with freeze-dried ice cream that I knew would probably taste horrible. It tasted like chalk, which I think was probably better than expected. But I am a sucker for all things chocolate, so when I saw dehydrated chocolate ice cream, I figured, who wouldn't want the full astronaut experience? I also there and later picked up some models, the models that you would push out the small plastic parts and glue them together with that highly toxic glue that we used. And I spent an agonizing amount of time putting together a model of the moon lander and of the space shuttle and mostly gluing my fingers together. And those models stayed in my bedroom for a really long time. I also remember using an old mining helmet that my dad had from work and crafting it with other pieces that I found around the house into kind of my own homemade astronaut helmet where I would reenact different launches and pretend that I was headed off to space. So these memories came flooding back to me a couple mornings ago, really out of nowhere. And I think there's something about the idea of leaving Earth and of seeing our planet from that other vantage point that you've heard space explorers talk about that has really always captivated me. And maybe it's that same pull that keeps me traveling now. It's certainly tapping into that same energy that keeps me traveling now, of never wanting to stay in one place too long and always wondering what's just beyond the next ridge or over the next state line. So that just gives you a little bit of a sense of what I'm seeing tonight and why I'm here. And maybe just a little bit more about the van, because I think we'll talk a lot about the van over these episodes. Now, I don't want to go all van influencer on you right out of the gate, but do get those van questions ready, or even your VANHLN questions ready. I'm willing to talk about both. I have lived in the van for 2 years. I do get a lot of questions about it. Where do I park? Where do I shower? Do I ever get tired of small spaces? Do I ever get lonely? So if you've got van questions, send them my way. And yes, to reiterate, the van is named Van Halen because Eddie Van Halen, of course, is the greatest rock guitarist of all time. I also find that it's a nice icebreaker to call my van Van Halen. It's helped me at a few border crossings. We can talk about that in future episodes as well. In these upcoming episodes, I also want to talk about some of the places that capture my imagination, places that continue to feed my curiosity and my wonder the same way those thoughts of being an astronaut fed my curiosity and my wonder. And one of the places that I continually come back to that really inspires me is the Southwest. To wrap up, I want to read a poem about the American Southwest. It is really inspired by my photography, the places I've seen, some of the emotions that the places I've seen conjure up for me. And I do spend a lot of time and love the border area of Mexico and the United States, especially along the Texan, New Mexico, and Arizona borders with Mexico. I love northern Mexico. I love those Southwest states. And the border area really fascinates me because it is such an arbitrary line, or sometimes wall, in the middle of the Chihuahuan and other deserts down there. This poem is really about some of the emotions I've had there and some thoughts about it. Frontera. Southern exposure, rocked by warm waves of tawny light, the desert breathes out and in, pulsing air softly like a lie. Simmering disconcertment, I climb canyons of pain, sand over slick rock swallowing footprints, sun pressing against my back, a hardened hand. Staggering distance, phantom borders patrol themselves, wind-carved lines shifting as the land forgets what belongs to whom. Solicitude unwavering, the earthen saddle soothes, dust settling into my knuckles, a quiet offering, a whispered truce. I am going to wrap up my first episode of WonderBuzz. I promised myself I would keep it short and sweet, otherwise I was not going to do it. So that is what we are doing tonight. If you want to follow along on my journey and look at my photography, please find me at nathanlarson.com. I'm also on the hellscape of social media. You can find me on Instagram at Nathan Larson Photo and various other platforms. And if you do have questions, thoughts, or suggestions for where we could take this podcast, I would love to build a community around where this can go. So please email me at podcast@nathanlarson.com. Thank you very much for joining me and beginning this experimental journey. I really appreciate it. Until next time.